Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the That's Life podcast with Basher and John. This time it's just going to be me, John, but a couple things we're doing differently is we have video up. I haven't done this since 2017, 2018 maybe, doing the video podcast. Basher's doing guests where he knows them in real life. I reached out to somebody that I do not know whatsoever, but they were on my radar. They seem very interesting because they are doing content creation, among many other things. Our guest today is Buu Dao.
Buu Dao, yeah. Buu Dao is fine.
You're like the only other Dao that I know. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Maybe we
yeah,
can
there's
get
a lot of Dao I find.
It's Nguyen.
I only found another Dao after 9 years of living in Canada.
I think in most interviews, people are always like, hey, could you give us a little introduction? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? But I don't want to do that with you. What I want to do is I want to ask you a question before I forget. There was a language video that you did, how to pronounce the last name Hui, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning, you sing a song, dun-na, 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 like we used to do. Do you know what song you were singing?
We don't talk anymore, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Who's this original singer on that?
I think it's Charlie Puth.
That's been stuck in my head.
Yeah. It's my mind. Whenever I say something, there's always something popping up. So that's. So yeah, my ADHD.
Yeah, no, it's great though, because when I see your content, I should say one of the things I've done in the past was be an ESL instructor teaching English, and I taught in high schools. I taught at an international school. Then I branched out, tried to do my own thing. And, you put videos up. The hot social media at the time when I was out there was Instagram. Things have passed on. You're blowing up on TikTok and other things. But when I see your content, on one hand, I see some similarities, right? You're doing the whiteboard thing. You're having problems with the marker. I can relate to that a lot. But the energy that you do it, it's like, I did it, but you really look like you're in your element. So how fun are those videos to do for you?
I think it's actually really fun. I started off with just rambling about how people pronounce pho wrong,
Right.
They keep saying pho, and I'm like, it's not pho. It's at least say pho, And then so I just started off about ranting it, and then it went pretty viral. And I was like, people are actually interested in this. And then so I started making more of that, and I actually really enjoy, making videos about telling people how to say it correctly over time, because as I take it more seriously, it does. I do have more pressure into okay, what do I have to say? How do I make it interesting? Because I feel like you have to make it funny in order to make it more interactive. So when I have to think a lot more about it, it's become a little more stressful. And at some point, I got a little burnt out making content. So I took a little bit of a break, actually,
I love that your content creation origin story started off with a gripe. You hated how people pronounced pho. And then, views are great. As much as people want to say that, you shouldn't get caught up in views and followers and all that stuff, there is something exciting about that part. And I don't think there's any shame being able to enjoy social media for that. It's just, once you get it going, then you start making more, and then you're trying all this different stuff. But for you, what's one of the main things that you kept going and kept trying to make more videos? What was it more? Was it going through your list of I have this gripe, and this is the other thing that pisses me off, and this is the other thing I want to get into? Or did you start getting requests? Or
I think it's a little bit of both. I read people's comments and I'm like, okay, I can grab some of this. But then also I think of, I want to do this. So I try to keep a little bit of a balance there. So I can still do what people want to see, but also I can do what I want to do as well. And then but what motivates me as well is still, I do want to educate people. I want to bring Vietnamese out there. I want to approach make it, easier for people to access.
One of the best things that you do, because it is fun, it is entertaining, but overall, even when you have gripes about pronunciation or something like that, or even when you're addressing more serious things, there is a lot of positivity to that. And I'm making some assumptions here, but I think you're pretty into Vietnamese culture because, one, you speak it, and then two, you were born there and you came over. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born and raised there. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I'm born in the U.S. My mom tried to teach me Vietnamese when I was younger, but I just mainly focused on English. So as it goes, Vietnamese families are huge, right? Have tons of family in California. You probably have tons of family in California as well.
Yeah.
That's one of the golden rules.
Yeah.
Besides having someone who has the name Nguyen in their name. But I will say that even though, I do have good family, I think my interactions with the Vietnamese community usually has a lot of pushback to it, where it's for me, why don't you speak Vietnamese? Oh, why aren't you more Vietnamese, essentially? And in a way, what you do can kind of touch on that, because it's well, for people who don't know Vietnamese, this is the thing to know, and this is how you say it. And I don't get so much of that interaction. So that's why I have a lot of respect for what you do. And I think that's the route and the way that you should go if you want to bring cultural awareness, or you want to bring appreciation to your culture.
I guess the more I talk to my friends who also, you, born and raised in English speaking country, and I feel sad that, a lot of them are being pressured. And then I think there's a cultural shift now that people, now they are older, they appreciate their culture more and they try to learn more. But I think it was really hard, are you first generation then?
So I think second generation, where I think being born in the U.S. makes me second generation.
Yeah, I think that's a huge shift for you. I feel like you encounter a lot of the things and trying to navigate your cultural identity and things like that too as well. And then so learning Vietnamese was not the priority, but as you get older now, then you start to appreciate, your culture more, and then you're able to learn more. But yeah.
I mean, my defense was always of course I love Vietnamese food. And then because of my mom, I'm pretty sure that I listened to, even though I couldn't sing along, but I listened to more Vietnamese music than most Vietnamese people that I knew in my immediate circle, just because my mom always had those Paris by Night tapes rolling, and Asia and all that stuff. So,
when a lot of my friends, not a lot, but when I have Vietnamese friends and they embarrassed of speaking Vietnamese, I actually really appreciate when they can speak a little bit. It's actually, even though that they, they're kind of shy because their Vietnamese is not very good, but I feel like I really appreciate when they try to speak it. And even though they think that people tease them, it's oh, it's so cute and things like that. But I think it's just an appreciation for, for them trying to speak it. So, yeah. So I feel like I do want to encourage people that even though their Vietnamese is not very great, just try to speak it, because people do appreciate that. Yeah.
No, and that's a good reminder to be putting out there, because I will say, one of the next things we'll talk about is being Vietnamese in Canada, or just your Canada Vietnamese experience. Because in the US, I feel like there is kind of a divide with Asians, where the Asian Americans, so the second generation, they usually don't interact with first generation immigrants. They are separate in their groups. That's not everybody. That's not a golden rule, but you will see the tendency for it to be split off in that way.
I do see that here in Canada as well. Yeah, there's a little bit of a disconnection between the two generations. The parents try to talk to the kids, but they're not really great. They don't know how to, and then the kids are oh, I don't really have the connection with my parents, but I love them, so I try to, but it's kind of hard. So I think that's not just an American thing. I guess like an immigrant's kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Your parents, are they aware of like the videos that you make?
Did I let them know? Yeah. I guess they knew about it later. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know in like some of the videos you do skits where you're being a mom or aunt or something like that. Are those based on interactions or is it just you brainstorming and coming up with wild ideas to film and record?
Yeah, that's actually, I'm just imitating my mom. Yeah. And I mean, I spent like 16 years of my life in Vietnam, so I do have like a really clear image of how the Asian aunties speak.
You were taking a break because you got burnt out, and I'm glad that you were able to do so. What was your schedule like back then when you were making content versus how you approach it now? Was it something like you're trying to make something daily and now you're back to just making something when inspiration hits you?
So I did took a break before. I think it was about like a year ago. Now I'm back into creating content more regularly. But I guess for me, to be honest, I wish I have like a more of a schedule, but I do kind of just make content when I have an idea and then kind of save it up, or I just post it. It's pretty sporadic actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm still in school, so I don't really have like consistent time. Like, this is Monday, I'm gonna make content. On Tuesday, I'm gonna edit it. So I have a lot of schoolwork. So whenever I'm freed and I'm thinking about, okay, what should I make next, and then I'll try to film it and then I'll edit it later. Yeah. It's honestly doesn't really have a huge schedule going on. Yeah.
It's not like content creation was ever like your goal as a job, right? Like with you going to school, it's just something that you do on the side, or? Yeah,
that's very true. I started off making content when I was working, and then I went back to school, and then so it's just like a hobby for me at first, and then now I'm taking it more seriously. So I do have I try to post I guess Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Like I try to post like 3-4 times a week, like that. But yeah, like for me right now, I do want to use it as like an outlet for my creative thinking. But yeah, I don't really have like a long-term goal to be content creator.
Yeah. And don't like, not even just the goal of being a content creator. Don't let anybody or me force you to like coming up with just like a big goal either. I think the healthiest thing that you can do for yourself is you just want a creative outlet, or you just want to be able to do something. And then, navigating how absorbed you get into social media, that's its own kind of separate issue. Because for me, I kind of started the same way. And podcasting is a similar idea. You just do something because you want to make something or you want to try it.
Yeah.
There are times in the past where I did try to pivot. It's like, maybe we can make something out of this, or it would be great to be able to make money off of it. And then when you turn your joy into a job, like it can tank real quickly. Like for me, it causes more frustration. It would make a lot of sense if like that's when your burnout period came about or not. For you, when you took that break, what made you decide to come back instead of saying, well, you know what, like that was a lot of fun, but maybe I don't need to be making videos anymore?
I think I always enjoy making content. When I took a break, I think it was necessary for my well-being. But then like after I'm like done, after I go back to my, energized self, and when I just scroll on social media, I do enjoy scrolling social media. I think it's just, I enjoy it, and I see that, I can make more content to educate. I can spread awareness and things like that. So I think it motivates me of what I can do to contribute. Yeah. And then so I think I enjoy that.
The way you put it, it sounds like you have the healthiest balance with that. Because I know that when I was getting really absorbed in like, oh, I should be getting better reach. Or the worst feeling is when you put in tons of effort into something and you feel like this is the best one that I did, and it gets the lowest reach or the lowest traction, or you make something where it's like you barely even tried and that's the one that took off. Like, really? That's the one that everyone's absorbing? What caught my eye when you're making your videos, you look like you're in your element, you look like you're having a lot of fun, but that's not to detract away from how hard you might work at those videos. So typically when you are making a video, from shooting and editing and posting it, like how long does that take? Because, like the videos themselves can be a minute or less, right? But you are definitely spending more than a minute putting it all together.
If we just counting from shooting until editing until posting, I would say it takes me about a few hours. Shooting itself, even though it's like a minute, I would try to shoot. It takes me at least an hour to shoot. Just, I retake a lot and just making sure things are putting together. And in editing, it's a few hours. I guess when I edit really fast, this can be within an hour, but usually like 2. So I guess around 2-3 hours, 4 hours, but also, the longest part is thinking about it.
Yeah.
Thinking and brainstorming what I should say. And like just thinking of ideas. I think that takes the longest. Yeah.
Is there a specific process for you to conceptualize? Because I know what you said earlier about how you kind of do your schedule loosely, right? But I don't know if you try to set aside time where you're like, think, Boo, think of these ideas to make, or you're kind of like more sporadic. You see something on TV and then you jot something down, or you're talking with your mom and you're like, oh, my mom's talking about that thing again.
Yeah. I guess I'm on the more sporadic side. So I guess, I take notes a lot. When I scroll on social media, I feel like that's, helps, I see this, so this inspires me. So I don't necessarily copy people. I'm like, this is like a good idea, so I can make something similar, or like this is a good idea for me to make something different. But then I guess also when I shower, then that's when I'm
shower
like,
thoughts.
Okay,
Totally.
It's like, what can I do? I start imagining all the scenarios that I can think of in my head. I'm like, I can do this and this and this and that. And I think shower time is very precious in terms of creative thinking. Yeah.
Because everybody's process is different. There's a tendency I see with like YouTubers, maybe because their videos are longer, that a lot of them will really map everything out. Sometimes like they'll script their dialogue word for word, even though they seem like they're being spontaneous with it. But I'm more along the lines of like you, and there's like a pro and a plus and minus to it, because I think the feeling of being inspired, it's so good. Like when the ideas come together, you suddenly have this clear idea of what you want to do, and like it's rapid fire, like all of it's like piecing together like the Matrix or something like that. It's one of the best feelings in the world, honestly. And it comes together for me with music and other things like that too. What sucks is you can't rely on it. Like I always tell people, I wish you could just flip on the switch, because
I agree.
When you're in the zone with the inspiring idea, it's amazing focus, right? For you, going back and taking classes, for me, I'm studying code on my own now. It's so tough. I'll say you put in the time, you try to be disciplined with it, but I always tell myself like, I wish studying code came to me like when I'm getting involved in music or something like that. I don't want to say effortless, but something similar to that feeling where it feels like it's effortless.
I always think that I can make it better. I still think that it would be better if I have like a more proper schedule. This is my ideal. I always think, but I haven't worked towards having a proper schedule, and I still kind of rely on this. And I agree with you. Even though it's really nice, we work with our interests, but it's not very reliable if we just keep doing that.
What do you think is your favorite platform at the moment? Is it TikTok over the others?
I guess TikTok is still more of my favorite platform. I feel like the audience there is more forgiving.
Okay.
I feel they're more like my age, so they're more forgiving in terms of what I can say and things like that than on Instagram. I think the audience is a little older, so they can be a little more critical in terms of like what they will say and things like that. And then so I feel more welcome on Instagram in a way. No, more on TikTok in a way, but yeah, I guess like the longer I'm on Instagram, because I was on TikTok first and then started on Instagram. So I guess the more I'm on Instagram now, people start seeing my face more, and then the more they become familiar to me, then they'll become nicer.
What's your approach to dealing with negative comments? Because at least from like the YouTube sphere, like everyone's like, never read the comments, But for you, you're actively engaging and going through. Is it something where you have to be like, okay, I just need to step away completely? Or do you have any kind of calming down type of method for you when you're dealing with negativity on there?
I guess I used to be very angry looking at the negative comments. That was when I first started making content. But I start to learn that like outside of my original platform, I have like other accounts, right? And then I go argue with other people and things like that. And then so I learned that when you go argue with strangers, it doesn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And then so I start to learn that actually, even though they disagree, it's fine. And in my mindset is like, you're commenting, you're boosting my engagement.
That's true. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you say. You're commenting, you're boosting my engagement. And actually, when I respond with kindness, they actually get embarrassed about their original comment, and they will say sorry or things like that. So I've learned that actually approaching those with kindness turns out like a lot better for me. And I'm like, oh, cool. I read them and I just laugh and I just, you're just boosting my engagement. So that's my mentality now. So I don't get too upset if they say something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing to aspire to because, first of all, I never got the reach that you did, and that's fine. But with the scaling, not so much interaction either. I think for me, and I guess it's like for everybody, even accounts with high engagement, there's still so many other viewers that aren't seeing anything at all, right? Mm-hmm. But then when people are commenting, and if it is something negative, it's such a quick reflex for some people where they're just like, I don't know if it's like so much trying to be a hater, but it's just like, just like bashing, like this didn't like this or that, and like that's kind of their routine. So when you respond back with kindness, it can be a wake up call for some people. It's like, oh yeah, this is a human being that I'm talking with, and why did I even say that to her? I don't even know, but yeah, and then they cool off. That's the that gives hope to humanity. There's also like this other sector where it's like, oh man, humanity is doomed. But hopefully you don't deal with that aspect so much.
People usually just find outlets to let out of their frustration and things like that. And then sometimes not necessarily about you, just their day went bad. And
exactly.
You happen to be in the thing that they watch. And then so they just, say something, mean and negative, and then so if you take it personally, it's actually a lot of the time it's just not about you. And then so I appreciate when people are being when they try to comment, constructive criticism, I would say. Mm-hmm. So like they say, you can do how I can improve and things like that in a kind and respectful way. I really appreciate that. And I try to take those comments and try to improve my videos. But if people are just straight up being nasty and mean, I just like, whatever. You're just boosting my engagement and putting that over there. Yeah.
This question comes from Rochelle. Rochelle is able to speak Tagalog, a little bit of Japanese and Korean. And in those languages, there's always kind of a sound that people make when they're thinking. I know a little bit of Japanese, so Japanese thinking sound is ano, etto. She was wondering, is there a thinking sound in Vietnamese?
The sound when you're thinking?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess in English people say or you know, like is there something equivalent to that, or do Vietnamese people just say
I guess we say that's our thinking sound. That's what I can recall.
Yeah, well, when you did that, I think of my aunt who did that, and it's not so different from but like a very distinct tone, maybe.
Yeah. So you like kind of lengthen and like you know.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how our thinking sound is. I that's what I think. I might be wrong, but yeah.
I mean, comments will let us know. Like as soon as like it's done, someone's like, "Oh, how could you forget? Obviously, it's this answer, right?" Another question from Rochelle is, "What's the most underrated Vietnamese food at a Vietnamese restaurant?"
I really love bún riêu, but I was gonna say, to me, bún riêu is really underrated, but not a lot of restaurants have that dish. I would say bún bò Huế. Bún bò Huế is really good.
Would you be able to describe that for people who aren't familiar? Because I'm trying to piece it together. I know that bún is like the noodle dish where you pour the fish sauce on top of it, right?
So bún riêu is it's still a noodle soup, but it's made of crab, or it's made out of crab.
Is that the one with tomato?
Yeah. The one with the tomato, yeah. Yeah, I really like that. But the version that we have in North America, it's just like a quick like a faster way to make bún riêu. Like the original type of bún riêu takes a lot longer and it tastes a little bit different.
Okay.
So the one that tastes very authentic it's hard to find in North America. But the one that's in Vietnamese restaurant is bún bò Huế. Yeah, I really like bún bò Huế. Yeah, the spicy one. What do you think?
We just talk about pho in general, right? Like, not that pho is underrepresented, but I guess I'm privileged in a way where I still think my mom's pho is like the best pho ever. It's better than any pho that I've had in a restaurant, right? Most places, they don't. Maybe you can help me out here, Boo. Like, what's the catfish dish?
It's a gan, right? Just a soup, right?
Not a soup. It's like usually with rice, and like the sauce is kind of sweet.
Oh, gà kho, like the caramelized.
Yeah.
Catfish, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen it once at a restaurant over here in Boston, but like that's usually not in any of these places.
That's very niche. Oh, that's so good. I love that dish.
Yeah,
not all places have that.
Yeah. So could you say the name of it one more time?
Yeah, it's gà kho.
Gà
like fish, kho is caramelized. Gà kho. Yeah.
Okay.
CAKHO. Yeah.
KHO. Okay.
Yeah, kho. Yeah.
So again, I'm that.
Clarify.
No, I am like. I had to stop myself, because again, like the influence I get sometimes. I was about to say I'm that shameful Vietnamese that doesn't really know Vietnamese, but it's like I'm Vietnamese American, and I try to be representative in different ways. Like I said, I love Vietnamese food. I listen to Vietnamese music. Back when I was making content creation, and clearly I'm very Asian in the face, and sometimes like places outside the U.S. They don't know how Asians could also be American. The term Asian American.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, when I was doing my language instruction videos, I would have a Vietnamese person comment, and they would say something like, "You give me hope that I can learn English," and like that would be like, okay, that's I mean, I only know English, right? But for them, it's like, oh wow, your English is so good, John.
I love it. Oh yeah, because I want to ask Vietnamese because like sometimes you make connection. I don't want to make connections like that's what Vietnamese go through, and then if you were to be like Chinese and like are you like oh yeah I don't really know that and it makes things awkward.
Well, I will say because that's the thing about Dao, right? Like Dao is a Vietnamese last name, but it is also a Chinese name. So when I was abroad, like I often had people I mean, I've had the full range of things. People confused that I was American, you know. They were like, oh, well, then that means you're half American, right? Because they would think that, oh, you need like a white father or white mother. But then I would meet Chinese people and they'd be like, why are you Vietnamese? You're Chinese, right? And I mean, if we trace back like the family tree all the way back, probably China's involved in that way somehow. But long-winded approach. And I don't know, maybe that's like a very Vietnamese tendency to be long-winded. At least that is the case with like my family. But back to your original question, Buu, yes, I am Vietnamese.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. I just don't want to make references and you're like, yeah, I don't know that. And then because I was like, oh, you make kaka. I was just assuming that you're Vietnamese because you were talking that you mentioned a lot of Vietnamese things and you mentioned like Gakka and you know your last name is Dao. I'm like, oh, okay, you're probably Vietnamese. Yeah, just to make sure.
Yeah, it never hurts to be safe. So you're in 2024, you're taking the very smart approach because you never do want to assume. But no problem at all. Yes, I can confirm.
But I find it's easier to do with Asian. You know, when we're Asian, we ask, are the Asian?
Yes.
I think it's easier.
That's true.
But I find that if my Caucasian friends, my white friends, say like, what's your background? And then I'm like, my nationality and things like that. And like, oh yeah, I'm Vietnamese. Yeah. So I think it's harder for them to ask. That's why.
It is harder. Like, to me, it's such a boring start to the conversation because I know there are some Asian people who do get offended by that. You know, they want to be like, well, I'm Canadian, right? Or, oh, I'm American. But it's like, where is this conversation going to lead, right? Like, is it, not the case with you, but if someone else is like, oh, John, are you Vietnamese? Is it because they want my recommendation on a pho restaurant that's nearby? Or, again, what we talked about, like the last name Dao, it's like, oh, John, are you related to Chloe Dao? Or I think there's like a football player who's like, because there's like 3 Daos in the world. And then the only other reason why Dao is in people's headspace is I'm not even sure what it is exactly. I don't know if it's a cryptocurrency, but there's some sort of technology called DAO, like capital DAO. I don't know what it stands for, but if you Google, that will probably pop up. Like maybe Vietnamese will still be first, but like this is kind of like neck and neck on the search results. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, that it makes sense. I agree. Like, what's their intention in terms of asking what's your background is, and then so if it's just to be curious, and I think it's fine. But when it start going into like the stereotyping direction, and then you're like, okay, I see where you're coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you have like the question a million times, or you can predict where it's going, that's not so fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other questions I had, it was kind of talking about I guess we can touch on Canada one last time. Is there a big Vietnamese community in Toronto?
That's a good question. I honestly not sure because I just moved here last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not here for very long. So I haven't met a lot of Vietnamese yet. Yeah. And I live pretty downtown of Toronto, so it's a big mix here. So yeah, I've seen some Vietnamese, but I haven't met a huge Vietnamese community yet. But when I was living in like Brampton, which is like an hour or half an hour drive from like Toronto, then I know that's I went to like a Vietnamese church, and then so it's like, oh, I know there's like a Vietnamese community there. Yeah. So I guess it's pretty big, I would say then. Yeah.
Okay. And then with it being pretty diverse, you feel comfortable. You do feel safe. Like you haven't had any issues.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I lived in Alberta before, which is like a lot colder and there's a lot more white people. There's more diversity here. There's a lot more people from other countries here. And then so I guess I feel less of a foreigner. I enjoy Toronto. It's really fun. There's a lot more, I guess we have like a lot more immigrants here, like a lot of people coming here, so it's more diverse. And then, in that sense, like I feel less of a foreigner, and even though I guess I don't know because Toronto is so big and it's like it's actually so big. So when you say Toronto, I have to like calculate that there's little cities that also consider Toronto.
Yeah.
So the Asian community, I guess like the Chinese, the Vietnamese, they do stay in certain
of course
smaller cities. Yeah. And then so they like in Mississauga or in Mississauga, and then so that's more like the Chinese Vietnamese. And then Markham is very Chinese. Yeah. So Toronto is so big, but yeah, there's a lot of Asian here. So I enjoy making a lot of friends. I want to ask like what inspires you to do the channel, and what's keeping you going?
Going through a rough job transition, basically, and podcasting just being that creative outlet. So again, it was something that I did before. It's how I made new friends and got to meet and talk to people like yourself without. If we didn't have this vehicle, there probably wouldn't be any way for me to like reach out. I might be one of those like just commenters being like, "Whoa, Boo, great job!" And you're like, "Yeah, great job." Yeah. Having it part of my schedule, the whole process of you record, you edit, you have to listen back, and then you publish it. It's kind of like meditative for me, and especially my main co-host Basher. He's through podcasting, one of the friends that I met, and he was actually one of the first friends I made in Boston. So we kind of go back from that start, and having fun conversations that I've recorded with my friend, essentially, that I can go back and like listen to, like that's a healthy thing for me. So just having it on the routine, having 2 episodes each month coming out, just like that systematic. So whatever else is going on in life, ups and downs, difficulties, it's like, okay, this is just something on the plate. Like for now, this current run of podcasting, creative process, meeting new people, I think like that's the core function of it. Because in the past, I really tried to make it like, oh, I want to be the next Joe Rogan, or, oh, I want to be like the Asian Oprah. Like I really tried to go through it, really worked on speaking skills and interviewing and all that type of stuff, but not so serious on that way anymore.
I see. Yeah. And I'm glad that you have come to where you are, like, understanding what's suitable for you and, what fits your capacity.
Yeah.
And not burning yourself out and still have a platform to be able to connect with others. Yeah.
That's like, and along those lines, it can change, it whatever works for 2024 might not work in February of 2024, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. It's two podcasts a month. That's very impressive because it's still like, it's a lot of work, I feel, for podcasts.
Well, what was interesting to me is, what you were saying about how long it can take you to edit some of the videos that you post. Because that multiplication factor definitely happens with audio. So if you do an hour-long podcast, at least like 2 hours to go through everything, but probably longer on that front.
Yeah. Hope you can use some AI stuff that they can edit out for you. I don't know.
I'm not a perfectionist, and I do tinker with AI on other things, but there's something with the way that I edit that's so systematically that I don't know if I trust AI yet to go
you have
through
your system already.
Exactly.
That's good. At least you know yourself and have a system that works for you. I think that's more important.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And thanks to you for asking on that point. Yeah.
It's really cool. So yeah.
So
thank you for sharing.
Boo, if people want to reach you or they want to follow you.
Yeah, my social is Buu Dao. Wait, I forgot. Is it _.Buu Dao?
Well, it depends on the platform, right?
Buu Dao _Buu Dao. BUUDAO _BUUDAO. And I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. They're all shorts, so I don't really have long form YouTube videos. I am trying to work with my friends to create like a Vietnamese course, but it's gonna be quite a long time, but it's in the making. So yeah.
Thank you for everybody who's tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you know somebody who should be a guest on the That's Life show, you can email us at dearbasher, that's DEARBASHER @gmail.com. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.